Hello and welcome to the PowerSwitch, gaming's call-in talk radio show. My name is Peter Spezia, and today is February 8th, 2017. This is the 10th episode of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We use Discord as a means to add and drop callers to talk about video games and switch the power that's found in a typical gaming podcast. You can join our server to participate during recordings at rhymeswithasia.com/call. You can subscribe to the PowerSwitch on podcast services such as iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And if you could be so kind as to leave a review, that would really help as well. On location here in Chicago, Illinois, for the auto show that's about to happen, here right on State Street at the Dana Hotel. Got a gorgeous view out the window, looking really nice. And it is my birthday today, so I could have taken it very easy, but I wanted to talk about this particular subject that came out. It was, big game news today, and kind of get your feedback on it. So we'll get to that soon, but turning 29, getting older, but questionably getting wiser, so we'll see about that. Now, if you're new to the show, we're hoping to have these podcasts happen every weekend, but also on certain weekdays like today, generally lining up with the evenings when big game news breaks. First, I open the show for about 10 minutes to reflect on the show's main topic. Then after a small commercial break, we set up callers to join the show to either discuss the show's main topic or set up any gaming question of your choosing. Once that's run its course, I'll end the show with a fun segment. We'll call it a day, hopefully in about an hour's time. And if that sounds like your kind of podcast, let's get right into it. So, big news today on the video game industry landscape, that the Electronic Entertainment Expo, also known as E3, is opening its doors to the general public for the very first time this year in June 2017. Began as a trade show in 1995, and while it had a couple tumultuous years, kind of the E for all days, if you will, it's always been meant for those that are in the video game industry, whether you work as retailers or executives or working in game development, just in that field. So the Entertainment Software Association announced today that an allotment of 15,000 tickets will be made available starting Monday, February 13th for anyone to buy. There's an early bird price of $150 per ticket. Normal price is $250, and it grants access to the show floor, panel discussions, and other events, like there are certain benefits with Jeff Keighley's planned developer interviews, let's say. Now, this is different than E3 Live, something that happened in 2016, where there was an assortment of games and events that were available free to the public outside the convention center. But the idea is to bring the public into the space that the industry has occupied for so long. Now, this move certainly has its benefits. It adds an extra jolt of relevancy to E3, especially when you compare it to other public events like Gamescom and the different PAX events, PlayStation Experience. In a way, I read an interesting article where it was phrased that this is an attempt for E3 to kind of become the San Diego Comic-Con of the video game industry, which is an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, just a big event, the biggest in the industry, where all of the people can gather together and embrace the industry of games. It's also a move that emphasizes the power of word of mouth and social influencers, whether they be big or small, as opposed to what traditional media usually allows for. It's embracing a wider gaming audience, which that's a good thing. It's also an attempt to bring back publishers that have foregone purchasing floor space in the past couple of years. I mean, we're looking at Activision and EA. Last year, their absence from the show, that was significant and made, South Hall very empty. They were trying to do their own thing where EA in particular had EA Play where, come to our event, don't worry about that E3 there. So if this can become a big public event again, like a Comic-Con sort of event, then that the biggest game publishers in the world are going to want to come back there and bring their demonstrations and buy that floor space again. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, a benefit of this move is more money. You're going to have more people paying for these tickets, investing more in the event, and that will certainly be a benefit as well. The biggest detraction, though, is that this hurts small gaming websites the most. Now, these were those who are able to make it to a trade event based on their own merits, and they waited in line to see the games like normal attendees would. Yet they're small enough that they weren't able to really schedule private meetings with developers where really the behind the scenes looks really took place. Now, these small gaming websites would be in competition with everybody else, waiting in those long lines that are just going to be even longer. And that's really not good for these small websites that are trying to start out and make a name for themselves by going to E3 and trying to break some of that news. And as a result of this, the role of media diminishes as a whole. I mean, when you consider it, everything is broadcasted live to the public around the world as it is. Anyone sitting at home could maybe try to make the same takeaways, especially from things like the press events, the conferences. What's the point of being there necessarily when someone sitting at home can make the same kind of take? So I have a unique perspective on this. I think I once attended E3. Now this was almost 7 years ago, back in 2010. So the times were different. Let's say G4 was still an operating television channel here in the United States for reference. So I wanted to kind of provide a little bit of perspective for those that saw this news and thought, this is my chance. I can finally attend E3. I want to buy tickets. I want to kind of provide maybe an alternate look as someone who has been there once before. Of course, in addition to the cost of the tickets, you need to consider the flight to Los Angeles, the hotel in Los Angeles, which that is expensive based on the time of the event, and food in Los Angeles. It's just more expensive than what it probably is back home. So there are more costs than just the ticket, and of course I'm sure you figured that out. But do keep in mind that I saw some reactions that I don't think grasp this perfectly, is that this does not allow entry into the press conferences. It may be your dream to go to E3, and if the idea is, I want to walk the show floor and play the games, that's okay, that's fine. But don't go to E3 based on this ticket and expect, well, I'm going to get into the Sony conference, I'm going to get into the Microsoft. No, those are different events that usually take special invitations. So don't be buying these tickets expecting that to happen. What you should expect is tremendously long lines on the show floor. I mean, in 2010, they were pretty lengthy, and the gaming press has only grown every year since then. And now you're adding 15,000 people from the public on top of that. That's going to be crazy. Just packed crowds as well. I don't know if you've seen pictures from E3's past, but that show floor gets pretty hectic. And just to think 30% more people on top of that, it's going to be nuts. The most important thing is to keep your expectations in check. If you think that you're going to get the chance to play every game and you're just going to have the greatest time, maybe scale that back a little bit. Maybe pick 5 games just to start that you want to play, and then kind of set that as a baseline and go from there. I would hate to see, come June, when you get all these people with tickets and say, well, E3 wasn't what I thought it was at all, because you kind of built it up in your mind when it's originally intended to be a press event. And we'll see if E3 kind of remodels itself a little bit, whereas the amenities for the public are kind of more accepting of a larger crowd size. We don't know that for sure. There could be some growing pains. It's hard to say for now, so just keep that in mind. But the most important thing, bring comfortable shoes. There's a lot of walking, there's a lot of standing, so be prepared. So what would I say is the right way to do E3 in 2017? Honestly, especially if you're trying to be a small gaming website just starting out, I'd say honestly stay in the comfort of your own home, communicate with people online, save the money for one, watch the press conferences, react. It could be live on YouTube, live on Twitch, pre-record things that you can edit later, do podcasts after the fact. There's so much that can be done at home where you don't have to kind of deal with the crowded, noisy, just chaotic environment that will be E3 this year. If you really do want to go to E3 2017, I would say make your highest priority that you want to look to network with other people, not to play the games. And I think that's really important. if you're trying to go there as just a fan because you like games, well, okay. If that's your one dream, again, set those expectations in check like I mentioned earlier. But if you're trying to go because you want to be in the industry, I think the biggest benefit that you could have out of it is the networking and meeting with other people, meeting with other journalists, meeting with other industry, just face-by-face interactions perhaps. Those, I think, are the biggest takeaways you can possibly get out of it, and not necessarily the games that you'll find on the floor, because really, again, like the big secrets are probably going to be those behind-the-scenes, closed-door, scheduled in advance sort of meetings. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of go over that, and just to kind of make sure that when if people go and buy these tickets on February 13th, they just really need to keep their expectations in check. And I hope that E3's past have not really built up what it is. As much as I enjoyed my time there, and I'll talk about it later in the show on our last segment here, it wasn't an ideal sort of thing, and I was very lucky to experience what I did. But at the same time, just even in the years that it's grown since then, like it is chaos, and there is only so much you can experience. And now when you add in the much larger crowds, I can only imagine what it is now. So that's what I think about the subject. When we come back, we'll get to the callers. What do you think about what I have to say? I'd love to hear your thoughts, but you can also bring up whatever gaming topic you'd like to discuss. And don't forget, you can also reply to what another caller had to say too. That's all when we come back here on the Power Switch. Welcome back to the Power Switch. Every time I keep having an episode in these hotel rooms, and with the way I project my voice, and it can be loud, but with thin walls, I'm surprised no one has knocked on the door and be like, keep it down in there. I don't know. It's good to, I guess, try different times throughout the country and see what works for different people and get to hear different voices. So looking forward to that for sure. Joining us from Pennsylvania, Seth. Welcome to the Power Switch.
What's up, Peter?
Hey, how you doing?
Good to be here. I'm doing good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. What's on your mind?
E3, and I heard what you had to say. I didn't really think of some of those things. Like, I was one of the people who was thinking we would be getting access to the press conferences if we did go. Mm-hmm. I did have thoughts that you were saying they want to make it more like Comic-Con, right?
I think it was something that a journalist, I think it was for Kotaku UK, they kind of had a write-up, and that kind of seems what they want to go on. If they want to make this, one of the biggest events in gaming, and they kind of know that, E3 is a big event, at least when it comes to news. But if they want to add the public element in it, but also have the news breaking as well, I think Comic-Con's a pretty fair comparison with what they're trying to go after.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say as far as what they're aspiring to be, that's probably the best thing to go with. Mm-hmm. The thing with Comic-Con is that I don't know if it's like this anymore. I feel like we did get to see some of the trailers after the fact at the most recent Comic-Con, but in the past, it always used to be that you go to Comic-Con so that you can see the trailers.
Right.
If you don't get that ticket, if you don't get into those rooms, you don't get to see anything. And, maybe it's like another couple of months before the first trailer for the newest movie comes out.
That's a very good point, and I think that's, a focus on the panel nature that's very big with Comic-Con. Now, certainly with E3, you have the press conferences, and I think the strategy there is, why just show these trailers, just very secretively to, so many media members when you can broadcast it live throughout the world. And that's one strategy, certainly. But then the rest of it's open air on the floor. And they talk about there may be some panels. So I wonder if, behind the scenes stuff may be shown there. But I think that's the one difference, at least between the two events, is that, Comic-Con is, it's the panels, and you can at least, kind of close that off. Not all of them get broadcasted. So that would be a difference there, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that as far as E3 goes, it actually benefits more from the fact that, from the type of media that video games are, because the people at home, they get to see the trailers, they get to see gameplay, but it's completely different to actually be there and to not only experience seeing the, trailers firsthand, but getting to play part of the demos. And I think that could be, a good selling point and I guess comparison to Comic-Con. I was thinking that, and this might be completely logistically insane, but what if during the press conferences, obviously you can't fit everyone in one theater, what if all of the screens that, like, I would assume that there's, screens all over the show floor, do you think that they would start playing the press conferences on those screens, and that way they could potentially sort of spread the hype throughout the area, even with the people who aren't in the press conference themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It really depends on when they schedule the press conferences. So E3 opens the show floor at noon Pacific time on the Tuesday of that week. Now, granted, a lot of the press conferences have been moving towards, some on Sunday, but mostly Monday. So all the press conferences themselves generally happen before the show floor opens. Now, I remember when I went, I'm trying to remember if, when the Sony event, it may have been at a time where it was after the show floor opened on like that Tuesday afternoon, because I remember like there were monitors where like part of the Sony conference was streaming, and I don't think that may have been live after that show floor opened. But granted, it's 7 years ago, so it's hard to remember.
Yeah, I imagine that if it's E3, it's probably best known for the press conferences. I think that's what all of the attendees know it for. Mm-hmm. So I imagine they're like, in order to justify the $250 price, like they're going to have to come up with things to make it worthwhile to go there. I mean, I feel like if they screw that up and just offer nothing but long lines, then this thing that they're doing to potentially revitalize E3 could potentially kill it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. They do have to consider, the public morale in a way. You can't just have crazy long lines like you hear from reports at PAX of, certain games where it's just very long lines. I mean, when I went, the longest line I waited in was 2 hours to play Nintendo 3DS for the first time. And that was pretty crazy. It was even longer the day after, but then again, that was the biggest focus of the show. Now, granted, this audience will be way bigger. There probably won't be any new hardware to try firsthand, I'd imagine. I mean, Switch will be out by then. I would still imagine Scorpio would be in conceptual talks, and I would almost doubt that there'd be, hands-on units there. But if that is the case, that would certainly be interesting. That would play a big factor. But they have to have considered this and not just say, well, we want to bring the public in, but we haven't considered any of the other variables.
Are they going to have more space for this? Because that could be one way to, fix some of these problems. Just have a lot more space, have a lot more demo stations for each developer. I can see why E3 itself would want to bring a whole bunch of people in. They're getting a whole lot of money from the ticket prices. But where does that benefit the developers?
Right. They've kind of maximized the size of the convention center, really. I mean, they're using both halls, the South and West halls of the LA Convention Center. And they want to bring in as many developers and publishers as possible. They certainly want to attract the Activisions and the EAs back again, I'd imagine. But it is that balance of they want to invite so many, but there's only so much space. And so I think that's going to be a struggle for them, because they can balance it like how they would in the past. And Nintendo always seems to have a very big floor space, regardless of what they bring. I mean, last year was just Breath of the Wild, and we'll see what it is this year. I'm sure they're going to have a Switch blowout. It's tough. That's all part of the planning that they have to do.
I feel like one of the benefits could be, and this is why I think like show the press conferences on the show floor and then cut the camera to wherever like the most people are just standing and looking up at these monitors, and just like for the biggest trailers, like I spent earlier today looking at the E3 reaction to Super Smash Brothers Melee, and just like,
yeah.
I mean, it was not quite as much as the Twilight Princess reveal, but still,
Right.
like, it was a whole bunch of just random people, mostly fans, and they were yelling and screaming. I feel like those are the kind of reactions that they want to get. I feel like other developers are going to want more of that, because I think that's a big part of what sells games.
Yeah, and for certain ones like that, I think
hype.
Sony invited some select PlayStation fans. Maybe they ran a contest or something like that. But that's all based on the company running the event. I don't think that's E3 as a whole. It does bring up an interesting idea that if they did something like a big day-long viewing party at like an arena, say if they rented out Staples Center, which is right in that LA Live area. Like it's a very short walk away from the convention center. If they rent out Staples Center for that Monday when the big press conferences happen, and then that's where you get the 15,000 plus public people coming in, that's where you could get big reactions. Like show the press conferences on the Jumbotron there. Like that could be really exciting. But again, that's planning a separate event because, it's again, the press conference is happening on the Monday. Does that alter the people's travels plans if they were thinking, just to come in for the Tuesday through Thursday? It would be a big thing. Zero Round, I'm mentioning in our Discord chat, in the podcast chat over on our Discord channel, Sony doing the theater idea for E3. I mean, that's theaters across the country, kind of a smaller, very localized scale. But yeah, if you're trying to help cater to those that are paying the money to come out there, I think that's a possibly interesting idea.
Yeah, that sounds too interesting to like actually happen.
Too good to be true.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for whatever's happening with E3. I think that with it sort of struggling for relevancy these days, they might be pressuring the companies to bring out the big guns. I don't know what kind of pressure they can put on the companies. Probably can't put much on Nintendo, but I think they want to have just a big showing from everyone, and they might get that with the pressure of having to impress all of these fans.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot on their plate. Like I think they realized that their relevancy was diminishing, and this was a move that had to be made. There are certainly the downsides of part of the benefit for a smaller gaming website. Someone trying to break into the industry is, well, you still could make the case to go to E3 because you are in the industry. And yet there were people who got in that were members of the public, some people making cracks like that on Twitter today, but still in the minority here. But for those gaming websites, whatever, that they're trying to break in, like that kind of loses the edge when you're adding just so many more people that could make their voice heard on Twitter and social media, and they could be an influencer, be they big or small. So I get the frustration of smaller gaming websites, but overall, for the success of the event itself as a whole, I think you did need to bring in the public.
Yeah. Would the I guess the smaller press sites, I mean, they would get like press badges.
Yeah, they'd get press passes, but it doesn't necessarily give you credence to cut in front of the lines or something like that, unless if they came up with a way where there were separate press and public lines, which it comes down to hopefully they've thought these things through.
Yeah.
It's very early and just the news breaking just today, but I kind of wanted to get like the quick reactions out of it. Like, what do we think about it? Like, could it work? And I think the idea of if they did something like rent out Staples Center, if you want those big reactions, if you want to make it relevant, have something to offer that the Gamescoms and the PAXs and all don't have yet, at least. When the press conferences shine at E3, have essentially like a big theater that everyone can all gather and watch.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about? I know something that just came to mind. You're a big fighting game community fan, especially in the Smash scene. So Evo just wrapped
That's
up today,
right.
unofficially, the results that Marvel vs. Capcom 3 apparently, if unofficially, won the charity donation total. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, congratulations to Marvel. I was definitely pulling for that over Pokken, just as far as what interests me. I don't think I watched either of them last year. I might have watched a little bit of Pokken, but
Just for the curiosity, yeah.
just for the curiosity. But that game was just a little slow for me. I hear that even though Marvel has supposedly been figured out as far as like, oh, there's only these many characters that'll work, and you end up seeing the same strategies every single game. Apparently, at the more recent, I don't know if they're locals or just sort of smaller tournaments, there's been sort of a rise of different, unique styles. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. The game that I was expecting to be competing with them was Skullgirls.
Yeah, same.
Like,
I think with, the legacy of competing with Melee and, pulling the money together for charity, you'd think they could have put up a bigger fight.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that the developers even one of them might have mentioned it, one of them might have retweeted it, but I mean, things have definitely changed from when they could pull all of the voice actors together and have big streams. The other thing is that I didn't realize that this was for charity until like today, or maybe it was yesterday. But like when it was first announced and when all of the pages went up, I did not see the Make-A-Wish logos. I might be blind.
Yeah,
but
it wasn't pushed as much as, it was in the 2013 or whatever it was.
Yeah. 2013 was the Breast Cancer Research Association. You know, everyone was really talking about that, and that actually probably helped Skullgirls out a lot because it had all those voice actors yelling for the boobs and other things like that.
And I guess, because of Pokken's efforts, 10,000 will be donated to the charity of choice for this time around. And that's good to see. But for Marvel, like it's the last go for it, really. I mean, Infinite's coming out later this year after Evo, and that'll be a shoe-in next year, I'd imagine. But it's like we said during the Evo episode. I mean, it is the most logical one to be selected, and it's interesting to see that actually play out.
I would have actually been like pretty upset if Pokken had gotten in, just because like I feel like part of the big push for it was Alpha Zealot, who runs both Smash boards and I'm not sure what the Pokken website is called, but he was really big on that whole fundraising effort. I should mention that the 10,000 that's going to Pokken, that's not going to an additional charity. That's going towards pot bonuses for Pokken tournaments.
Oh, yeah, that's an important distinction. Thank you for pointing that out. No, I'm sorry. I'm just phased here that, Alpha Zealot, that's a name from, my Smash Brothers past. That's crazy to see what he's continued to go. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, 10,000 as far as pot bonuses, like I don't know how big the Pokken scene is outside of, that one time at Evo. I'm sure there are tournaments for it. Like I think it's going to be at CEO, but hopefully they don't die from losing this like the Skullgirls community seem to. Oh yeah, and hopefully there's potential that there could be a Pokken port or sequel on the Switch. So this might not be the last that we hear from Pokken at Evo.
That is certainly possible, especially when you see the Switch commercials and the original trailer wanting to push that esports angle. So that's certainly a good point. Well, Seth, thank you so much for joining. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Major Moses. Twitter, I don't tweet too often, so it won't blow up your timeline.
Well, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for contributing, and have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
All right, thanks, Seth. When we come back, we'll look back into the past, almost 7 years ago, and look at the tweets that I made when I was on the show floor at E3 2010. You won't want to miss it when we come back here on the Power Switch. Welcome back to the Power Switch. Let's get to a new segment I like to call the Wayback Gameback Time Machine. So here in the Wayback Gameback Time Machine, I'm looking back to things that happened in gaming history, in the gaming past. And we're going to actually start with, in a way, my personal past. Because as I mentioned earlier in the show, I was lucky enough to have a connection with one of my friends in college to be able to go to E3 2010. And it was particularly a Nintendo connection, so I was very fortunate enough to be able to go to the Nintendo conference that year. And that is known by Nintendo fans as the last very good Nintendo press conference at E3. This was where they showed the Nintendo 3DS for the first time. So many other games. There was Kid Icarus Uprising for 3DS, obviously. But, Wii was still in a pretty strong time, I would say. This was also the demo of Skyward Sword that went awry, and that was so awkward to be there. Donkey Kong Country Returns was revealed. And if you ever go back and watch that conference, after that Donkey Kong Country Returns trailer shows, they cut to the crowd, especially it was on G4, I think. But I am in that crowd shot, just very briefly, but I'm there. 22-year-old me. This is GoldenEye 007 was another one. It was a lot of great Nintendo games at that one. But I wanted to kind of go through some of my tweets that I made, because back in the day of hosting the Show Me Your News podcast that I did, I was, putting out different tweets and experiences from the floor, and I wanted to kind of run through some of them to kind of illustrate what it was like to be at E3 back then, almost 7 years ago. Now, of course, since this was 7 years ago, it's always just a little cringe-worthy to look back on tweets, and it's like, oh, did I say that? Okay, well, so starting on Monday, June 14th, 2010 was the travel time out there. So I said, quote, touchdown at LAX. Flight had satellite TV and Superbad was on FX. Now to finally get food and wait a few hours for my friend's plane. Haven't eaten since lunch because of the airport's design. Long story. Friend's plane should be here soon. Podcast listening to kill time. And then finished up with, and of course, our hotel is somehow overbooked despite our reservation. We'll be drained for Nintendo and more tomorrow. So it's an interesting story of what happened. My friend was coming from Florida area, and I was from Michigan. So different flights out there. Had to wait a few hours for him. His flight got delayed a little bit, so I had to wait even longer. And when you get spit out at an airport, I hadn't ever really traveled by plane that much, which is kind of interesting now when I'm flying all the time for work. But when you get spit out and you pick up your bags and all that, there's nowhere for you to really go. Like, there's a bench and maybe a bathroom, and there's just nothing. And I was starving. I had no food. Like, you couldn't get food. We weren't about to pick up a taxi, and LAX is a pretty crazy airport with all of its terminals. So, yeah, I waited there. That was a long time. We went to our hotel finally, and we didn't have our reservation, even though we did have one. So they had to set up another hotel. It was 2 a.m. when we finally got in there, Pacific time. And, that's 5 a.m. Eastern time. So it was long day, and then we had to be up. We only could sleep for a few hours. And, okay, first day of E3. So that was interesting. So when I got to sit down in the Nintendo press conference, so some tweets here. After some more administrative issues, we are inside the Nokia Theater for Nintendo. 5th row, stage right, middle aisle. Bring on Reggie. Yeah, those were really good seats. Those are really, really good seats. 1 more hour till showtime. They have multiple choice trivia on the screens to pass the time. Some easy, some challenging. Celebs spotted here. GTTV's Jeff Keighley, Kotaku's Brian Crescenti, and the backs of G4's TV crew. Kevin, maybe Olivia, and maybe Zach? I don't remember who Zach is on G4. That just shows the passage of time. All right, 5 minutes away. Phone off during the show. 3DS, Zelda, Vitality Sensor, other surprises? It's Nintendo's show to win. Vitality sensor. Oh boy. Oh boy. And after the show, I tweeted, I just attended the most fucking epic conference ever at E3. No contest. All hardcore from Nintendo. Oh, and there's more. Oh my god. Oh my god. 3DS demo from Booth Babes at the show. Trust me, this handheld will be legit. Another half hour before the floors open to congoers. But guys, 3DS. Link swung his sword and I gasped. Now you're playing with power. Fucking cringe, man. Oh boy. Just to kind of run through the games that I got to try on the show floor there, I was GoldenEye, Metroid Other M, Sonic Colors, when I thought Other M was kick-ass, apparently. I mean, I did enjoy Other M for what it was worth, but, you know, the story, wow, not so much. Of course, Donkey Kong Country Returns. I tried Little Big Planet 2 and struggled. I tried Gran Turismo 5 in 3D, but the game crashed on me when I tried to pick the Enzo and Gallardo, and that was interesting. That was the year of Kinect at the E3 show floor, so I was in a very long line for that to try different things there. Sonic 4 Episode 1. Did that as well. It's a really big show floor. I tweeted, really starting to grasp the scale of this entire presentation here at E3. The people, the tech, the monitors, this shouldn't change at all. Like, it's very overwhelming when you get there. Lots of lights, lots of sound, very, very loud. But that was day one, Tuesday, January 15th, 2010. On the next day, Wednesday, January 16th, sit on the shuttle to the LA Convention Center for day 2 of E3. Then getting in line for 3DS no matter how long it may be. After that, Zelda. This 3DS line is even worse than yesterday. It's unbelievable. Probably will be worse tomorrow. I'm guessing a 90-minute wait. An hour and 15 minutes later, still in line for 3DS. The end is at least in sight. I want to try the naked sample of Snake Eater 3D. Guy says there's a time limit of 20 minutes on the 3DS stage. And 2 hours later, here we go into the booth. No direct pictures or video of the screen, security says. Wow. Wow. Snake Eater, Kid Icarus, Mario Kart, Kingdom Hearts, and an interactive target shooting demo. Time ran out for Paper Mario. Graphics are pretty damn close to Wii. Loved every second. And I shook Charles Martinet's hand. Nintendo is going to make loads of money. That's right, I did get to say hi to Charles Martinet, and I got a quick little video thing, even though they didn't do that. But say no video, whatever. I think they meant more of the screen. But I got a little shot of him. He waved, and I really thanked him for the work that he did. Shook his hand. Like that's. I remember, that did happen. I almost had forgotten. It's been that long. So yeah, then I went to try The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. A very long line for that as well. I had a swag for a t-shirt that I still wear to this day. It's a pretty good one. They gave out the shirt If You Could Beat the Boss, which was the scorpion with the eyes in it. That you slash each of those. It was in the sand ship level, if you remember that from Skyward Sword. So I mean, it's pretty easy to get a sense of. You just kind of jump, hop around. A lot of people were really bad at that. It was shocking how many people were bad just looking back on it. Let's see, I also played Kirby's Epic Yarn, Golden Sun Dark Dawn on a 3DS XL. That was, just happened to be there, I guess. I remember I also played Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, and I really did not understand it at the time. I mean, I would go and play it, several years later, and that's a great game, but to play it on a demo and a time limit, that was really unusual, I guess. And then there was PlayStation Move. So here are some tweets there. Currently in line to use the Move. Significantly shorter lines compared to 3DS, Zelda, and Kinect. Like by a lot. TV Superstars for Move was a little silly, but it was a good introduction to the device's precision. Back in line for the boxing game. Looks like they're distinguishing those in the Move line between fight and not fight. Guess which one of their games is the most popular? The fight was not worth the hour-long wait, but Miyamoto checked it out from the outside with his posse while I was in there. Yay, gaming idols. That's right. That did happen as well. I mean, I wasn't using it at the time. I was, in there. There was someone else using it. Kind of went there in pairs. But yeah, wow. That's. But yeah, it was Miyamoto and Trinan and a couple others. That's an unusual tale, I guess, to tell. Just that the first time I saw Shigeru Miyamoto in person, it was through glass while I was in a PlayStation Move demo. That's really fucking weird. So yeah, there was also Sonic Freeriders, Castlevania Lords of Shadow, The Conduit 2, and The Last Airbender, based off of the movie. Marvel vs. Capcom 3, I thought was my game of the show. I played Morrigan, Dante, and Wolverine. The opponent picked Ryu, Deadpool, and Captain America before me, according to a tweet that I had. Oh yeah, Mario Sports Mix? That was weird. And gosh, how could I even forget? Epic Mickey. Disney's Epic Mickey was another game that was kind of a surprise from the Nintendo conference, and was one of the last games I played on day 2. To the point where it was so empty, but you still had Nintendo PR there. And after I played, they took me aside and would you like to do an interview for a video we're doing for Nintendo's website? And I said, okay, sure. And I gave an interview, and they used part of it in a video. And according to the tweet, I said, yes, I also gave a video testimonial to Nintendo regarding Epic Mickey for their E3 site. Told me I was like a pro, lol. Keep an eye out. So the funny story that happened with that is, I apparently gave him this really good quote, and it was just a good interview in general. But then they just used this segment where I was talking about the paint thinner mechanic and just the basics of the game, and it didn't come across as well as I was hoping, and that was a little weird. I don't know. And then Thursday, nothing really happens on Thursday. It was just kind of the last dregs of the show, I suppose. But some interesting tweets here just to wrap things up. Just walked past Peter Molyneux. What happened to Milo and Kate anyway? Not a bad tweet from several years ago. I'll give myself a little bit credit there. I tried Sonic Colors for DS, Wii Party, Super Scribblenauts, and then tried a couple games again, like Sonic. I guess I really liked Sonic 4 back then. It was an okay game. No complaints there. On the way out, we stopped by where they were shooting the bonus round, which was a game trailers show, where they had Jeff Keighley, Brian Crescente, Michael Pachter, and as my tweet said, some guy? If I'm trying to remember, it might have been Shane Bentonhouse, maybe. I don't think that video is there online anymore. Obviously not on game trailers, but not even on a YouTube archive or anything like that. But that was another video where you pause at certain points, my friend and I are there, kind of blurry in the background, that's us. So, there were games I didn't get to try, as my tweet says. Games I didn't find demos for. Metal Gear Solid Rising, Portal 2, Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, and others. Gears 3 and Reach only had a theater booth. So again, those are probably ones that were backstage, secret shows that press had to set up meetings for. And so people on there on the floor couldn't really do that. So I waited in a lot of lines. Granted, I got to play quite a bit of games, looking back on it, but the game press has only grown since 2010. Add that to the fact that they're increasing the audience by 30% with the 15,000 public tickets. The size of the floor is not changing. The size of the booths is probably not changing. I hope that, at E3 they're coming up with different strategies to kind of help accommodate that larger size, because it's going to be crazy. It's really, really going to be nuts. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting to take a look at that Wayback, Gameback time machine, looking back at my my E3 2010 experience. More stories there. I wish I could go further in depth, but there's only so much time, really, and just wanted to kind of cover all that there. And that'll do it for this episode of The Power Switch. We are hosted by rhymeswithasia.com, and we're on YouTube and Twitch at rhymeswithasia. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Power Switch, and you can email us any questions, concerns, comments, or opportunities at powerswitchpod@gmail.com. Most importantly, to participate in future episodes, you should join our community on Discord by visiting rhymeswithasia.com/call. It's a small but growing community, and in these early months of the show, it'll be easier than ever to have your voice heard on the podcast. If I want to give you a YouTube video to watch this week, let's continue to talk about GameStop's Circle of Life initiative, the idea of the 4 pillars of their business, where they're not stressing selling new games. And so Mega64 takes a look at this in a video that just came out, I think it was today or yesterday, very recently. They call it The Circle of Life, fitting enough, but check out Mega64's video highlighting this. It's really, really well done for a 2-minute clip. So I apologize, I'm still getting over this cold, and it's, late, my birthday. I've been up since 2 a.m., and now it's the equivalent of 11 p.m. For the East Coast. Here in Chicago, wrapping things up, wanted to kind of get my thoughts down, and as yours as well, about this E3 public news. It's big. A lot of people were talking about it today, and figured it was worth discussing. So maybe we'll record on the weekend. I don't know. I mean, I'll finally get to celebrate my birthday with my wife, my brother, my family. Not really getting the chance to today through the end of the week, so we'll see how the scheduling can work out there. But regardless, stay tuned to our Discord channel as that develops, Twitter as well. And whether it's live or on your own time, I look forward to you joining us for our next episode. With that, I'm Peter Spezia. Until next time, switch up, call in, game on.